Hello, and welcome to this episode of It's Not You, but Sometimes It Is, where real leaders talk about the real crap that we face, overcome, and the lessons we've learned. And this episode, I think you're going to love it. We slam attorneys, and that's fun for everyone, right? So I'm interviewing Erin Hulme with Chamberlain Herdlica in Houston. She's a COO there. We have a lot of fun talking about people problems, bad bosses, and the things that she's done to kind of pull the lever and improve leadership and culture in a very difficult field to do that. And so please enjoy this episode. Welcome to It's Not You, but Sometimes It Is, the podcast of real leaders talking about the real crap that we have had to overcome and the wisdom we've gained. And today I want to welcome Erin Hulme with the law firm. She is the COO of the law firm Chamberlain Herdlica in Houston, in the Houston area. Erin, thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you. And as you said, the things we have to deal with, and it's a Friday. We're sitting here Friday, and I've had a day where I started with no meetings, and it has been meetings since I sat down. So it's just you roll with the punches sometimes.
That's when you know you're important, Erin, right?
Yeah. So they tell us. So they tell us.
Well, I am absolutely thrilled to record this conversation because you've had such an interesting career trajectory where you really worked your way up and have developed a lot of expertise. It's one of those stories that everyone's like, yes, that it is possible, right? So, can you just give us a start to what was your path to the C-suite?
Yeah, so my path, like most, is not direct, although it is a natural progression. So I started in a very different industry. So I guess I should go back and say that I'm with law firms. I've been with law firms for 18 years now. This is my 18th year, and couldn't imagine doing anything else. I love it for a number of reasons. But I actually started in the event industry, so in large corporate productions. Love that job too. That was, as you can imagine, early 20s, young and, full of energy, and decided that I wanted something a little more 9 to 5, which is really the joke, right? Because that's the fallacy. If anybody wants to get into the C-suite or management, like they lied to you. That's just where we're going to leave that. So there is no such thing as 9 to 5, but I decided I wanted to pivot and do something that was, more regular schedule, and went back to what I thought was my first love, which was employment law in my undergraduate years. Decided I was going to become a paralegal because I loved employment law so much. Wanted to do something with law firms, but not be a lawyer. And so got my paralegal certificate. Never spent a day as a paralegal in my entire career. And so I started, and then the first firm that hired me was a small 5 to 7 attorney firm. And they saw that I knew how to do websites and graphic arts from my time in the events industry. So promoted me to their director of marketing, and kind of the rest was history. About 6 months after working in their marketing department and budgeting for, at the time, it was new AFAs, or alternative fee agreements. They're like, wow, you know the finances too, and you know how to manage people. They're like, we don't like our current administrator, so do you want the job? It's like, yeah. Now keep in mind, I'm 25 years old when this gets handed to me. 25, I've been doing this all of probably 18 months in the legal industry. And I mean, you don't say no, right? You just fake it till you make it. And I had 48 hours. They terminated my predecessor on a Friday. On Monday, I was their new director of administration. And the rest is history. That's where I am now.
Erin, there's definitely a theme that I get from when I talk with COOs. And one of those themes is they became a jack of all trades by doing different aspects of a business, from marketing, operations, even sales, human resources, people management. and you have a really similar background where you got interested, you learned things, you did whatever it took, right? And then the second theme I see that definitely paved my path is a healthy dose of overconfidence and risk taking. Like, you think I can do it? Great, I'll do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, of course, yeah, you have to. I think when we first spoke, I said it's a little bit of narcissistic confidence because that's really what you have to have. Um, and the ability just to do what it takes to get the job done. This week is a great example of that. I needed a report out of our financial accounting system that didn't exist, so we call that custom reporting. So I called the vendor. They're like, "Yeah, it's going to be 2 months till we can get you this report." I was like, yeah, no, give me access to our SQL database. How hard can it be? I can write that report, right? Like it's an Excel document. It's not. But I have, thank you, Chat GPT, because but that's operations. It's really about figuring out how to make the parts work that aren't working and then optimizing them along the way. And you have to have a little bit of knowledge of each of the departments,
Mhm.
and the more you have, the better it is to make it work efficiently. And that's really our goal. I'm going to get, somebody's going to write a bad comment when I say this, but operation managers really don't do anything. We're really the glue, right? We're the middle, the spoke that keeps everything else moving around us.
Yeah, you're the enablers,
Yeah.
right? To figure out how to support everyone, which is a skill in and of itself. And you have a track record of kind of going from place and going to the next place, going to the slightly bigger place, and helping them all get more sophisticated with the way that they're doing things and solve some challenges. So I'm curious, as you've come in and tried to turn things around or just optimize things, what has been an unexpected obstacle that you've had to overcome, or one of the biggest hurdles you've had to overcome, and what did you take away from that?
I uh I think the biggest one is, there a, a myriad of management and leadership books that tell you do this, don't do that, you need to do this is important, right? And you can read it and they're all different. And one somebody handed to me once was, the first 90 days.
Mhm.
And as I thought back on my time, everybody says don't do anything for the first 90 days. You gotta learn the people, learn the culture, really figure out what's going on. Well, that's great in theory. In practice, that's not always the case. But one of my biggest mistakes, I think, is always not really understanding, either not being confident enough to make the change that needs to be made before the first 90 days, or not waiting longer than 90 days to make those changes. And it's such a test this and then see what happens. It's a test and reaction. And one of those was going into a situation where there were individuals who really had PTSD from my predecessor. I mean, wouldn't even look at their own shadow without getting scared, which meant that the company, the organization wasn't innovating. And it was also bogging down my position because I was making day-to-day decisions and I was completing operational tasks that I shouldn't have been. I should have been focused on bigger picture things, but I tried to change it too quick. And when individuals aren't ready, they are resistant and they'll actually fail to innovate. And then they feel like failures within themselves. So a little bit of it is just understanding the psychology of the individuals that you're working with
Mhm.
and then changing your strategy based on that.
Yeah, absolutely. The psychology and the culture, what's the history, the story and narrative there. That's a hard thing to gauge. You've got to have an immense amount of kind of perceptivity and awareness to be able to strike that right. You are working with a lot of attorneys and just people in the legal field. I'm going to go ahead and call something out that might also generate negative comments, but
Okay.
I've worked with a lot of high-level professionals in very senior leadership roles, and I'm just going to say attorneys have not been at the top of my list of self-awareness, social awareness, and social functioning, right? Being able
Oh
to
yeah.
really understand people and relationships and also manage their own reactions to things very well. And I'm wondering what kind of cultural challenges you've seen in these firms with, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? So what are some dynamics you've seen that have just created unnecessary friction or people problems?
Oh my goodness. I mean, lawyers, and I've been working with them for 18 years, but really are the worst. They're a different beast. They are, I think, self-aware that they're self-centered. It's very much me and what I want. And dare it not be one of your top producers, because my goodness, the problem is they're not business people. And at some point, 60 or 70 years ago, the law firm stopped being the guy in the corner office smoking his cigar telling everybody what to do, right? And because that's, you look at memes and that's what everybody thinks about a law firm, but it's not. We are major organizations with departments that need support. And so culturally, some attorneys haven't changed, and they go to law school and they believe that that's the case. And I honestly think that that's a failure of law schools these days, is to really teach new lawyers like at least a semester on what the business of law is, because you are selling a commodity. You are selling your hour of time. And sometimes, just like anywhere else, clients don't want to pay for it. So it's amazing because some of them can just smooth the pants off of their clients, and they're so good and accommodating and flexible. And then they shut that door, they walk back to their office, and it's like being back in the 1910s, right? It's like, what do you mean you want your secretary to go get your lunch, or you've got to dictate on a dictaphone? Like, nobody does that. We just don't do that anymore. So I think from that perspective, the hardest thing is getting them to change the internal workings of what they think a law firm is. And certainly when you're dealing with a firm like my last two firms, where you have multiple generations working in the organization, I mean, managing that, just the generational differences alone is tough. It's like walking on a fulcrum, right? It's like, okay, I got it, not too much weight here. And then you also have to be a little bit of a chameleon, because you can be very direct with some, and some you have to treat with kid gloves, regardless of what your title is. So I've learned to kind of have multiple personality disorder in a sense. And I think that's why I'm so exhausted when I come home, because I'm literally like, okay, what mask do I put on before I walk into this person's office? So that's the biggest difficulty, is learning again that psychological treatment of each individual. It is crucial to
Mhm.
managing in a law firm.
Yeah. Well, I think it's crucial to managing any group of humans, right? But
Well, yeah,
especially
some
those
are a
that
little
work
different.
with.
And I think that's the difference. I talk to my friends who work in corporate America, and I think corporate America was just leaps and bounds ahead of law firms in terms of managing organizations like a business, right? A
Yeah.
machine that has operations. Because corporate America, you go in and you know what you're signing up for. It's structure. It's, here's our rule, here's how we manage, and here's how we go on. Now, do they have their own issues? Absolutely. But for the most part, there's a box that, when you sign up or you're employed by one of those organizations, you have to work within. Law firms were never like that. They were like little stars, right? So star graphs, where it's like this person needs this and gets this, and these people don't get anything. And so you had this box that exploded into this weird spider graph.
Yeah. Cult of personalities and just a lot less definition of roles and how things work. So it ends up being based on the alpha personalities. And you've got a lot of alphas with attorneys. And you also have people who their their career demands that they're win-lose. I have to win, which means this other entity has to lose. And that is great when you're winning trials, winning cases and making good deals. But it's not great when it comes to sustaining relationships at work and having a win-lose attitude. I've seen a lot of professions where that is how we win in an individual contributor role, and then we get into a leadership role or a role of influence, and you can't be that way anymore. You don't get to be that autonomous monster that makes everyone afraid, right? That it's me, it's my way, and everyone's got to acquiesce around here, and I have all the answers, and I'm brilliant. That does not work as a leader. I'm
Yeah,
sure
and I
you've
think
seen some of that.
it is. And so, the unfortunate thing that's, but fortunately changing in the legal industry is for a long time, the leaders were attorneys themselves. So they were promoted to management positions within the law firm. So we have managing shareholders, we have practice group leaders, but there was not a business person to surround them and help them in that. And I think, Peter Cuneo, who's one of my favorites, just because I always seem to be the personality that a firm employs when there's a turnaround situation. He said, try and get buy-in, but when you can't, make the hard decisions because gangrene kills the body. And that is, I mean, it should be blown up in every attorney's office somewhere because you have to stop thinking my group, I'm protecting my people. It's I'm
Mhm.
protecting the whole body, the
Right.
whole organization.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Um, you probably heard of the HR strategy in hiring and firing is we no longer suffer brilliant assholes, right?
Yep.
Like you don't get to come in here because you're gangrene. You're going to poison the body with negativity and affect the whole culture. So it's hard sometimes to call that out and try and coach someone, and then just you have to make the call that they've got to go if they're unwilling to change. It's hard for everyone. I'm sure in your industry you've had to do that quite a bit.
It does, and I think people have this fallacy of managers, especially when we're data driven. So I'm very much on the data side. So I always try and marry the data with the empathy,
Hmm.
and that it's difficult, right? Because one's always going to win in a decision, but you have to understand that without the productivity, you don't have the widgets moving through the system to the ultimate goal, which is profitability or shareholder profitability. But you have to it's very hard to get rid of individuals because they're just not good for the culture when they're top producers.
Hmm.
But ultimately, what you find, and the data proves this, is that you have a revolving door of either staff or associates. And so, what you want to spend all that money and time and you invest in them and mentor them and teach them and frankly pay them, right, a salary, only to have them walk out the door over and over again because somebody is, poison to the culture.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, and that kind of leads me to, I'm interested in your perspective on bad bosses in the legal industry. When people get into a role where they are supervising and influencing and responsible for other people's results, what are your top one or two indicators that someone is just not a good leader? They're a bad boss, and what have you done to try to fix them?
And so I think one thing is I want to separate bad bosses because bad bosses can be too nice, too empathetic, and then they're bad bosses that are too hard line and just, a-holes, right? So you have two different types of bad bosses, and I think people always go to the latter, right? This is just a terrible person who yells at me all the time. But the opposite can be bad too.
Absolutely.
So, I think what you have to do in my position is it's coaching. It's what is the outcome you want? What is the result you want for your group? Let's talk about at the end of the year. I always start a conversation with at the end of the year, when we're sitting here having our debrief on the year, what do you say? What's a win to you? What does a win look like?
Mhm.
Is it we've increased productivity 20%? Is it we've reduced turnover 20%? What does that look like? So for the too nice person, it's like, okay, sometimes you need to let me be the bad person. I get it. You have relationships with all these individuals. Let me come in and set the standard, tell them what I'm going to look for as an operations manager. And here's what it's going to look like for you if you don't hit performance targets. And then you can be nice and take them to happy hour and lunch. And, we'll play a little bad cop, good cop. So, that's where I get to be that support role for somebody. Then when you have the alternate, you know, that's where I come in and say, you have a problem, and you can't ever directly tell somebody you're losing people because you're a butthead, right? Nobody reacts well to hearing that, right? Because as lawyers, as we already said, they're a little bit of narcissists. So like being told that you're the problem is like, unfathomable. So you have to just uh, gently deliver that message. And that message is, let me help you do this. If somebody has an issue, can I go talk to them? And generally, I will go and talk to the individuals in their group, and I will try and coach them on how to communicate with that person better. And sometimes it's just a matter of a miscommunication, right? Their communication styles are just different. So if I can coach the attorneys or the support staff within the department to communicate better with their manager, usually that works. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the person is just not a good person. And then we have to make a different decision as an organization.
Right.
Do we want this person here? And then we have a carrot and stick. Okay, we'd like to see this for your practice group. This is what we consider success. And we will reward you for getting to these KPIs. And if that doesn't work, then it's like, okay, well, this didn't work. We told you what our expectations were of your practice group. So now the stick is that we are going to hold you personally accountable because you have not changed the way you
Mm-hmm.
manage your business unit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Um, so you've had a lot of difficult conversations in your career, I can tell, and had to make hard choices and have hard coaching conversations. And I know that you pay attention to culture. All COOs have learned a lot about culture and how important it is. The way things really are around here is my favorite definition of culture, right? So as you see your firm growing or developing, becoming more sophisticated over the next few years, what are some cultural changes or improvements you want to make?
So this is a different organization than my prior situations. In this situation, I have an organization that is having issues because of its success, right? So they're having to look back and say, look, we're 60 years down the road and we're still operating like a 10-person firm. And so they hadn't taken the steps to implement the processes and the structure that you needed to operate 4 locations nationwide with, hundreds of employees and attorneys. So I am having to unwind some of that. Well, we'll just give them a lollipop and tell them it's okay. And then, we'll wait till the end of the year to see if our, coaching discussion worked. It's like, no, we need to have monthly meetings and check-ins, or we need to have quarterly meetings and check-ins. And we need to be transparent with our communication. Where is the organization today and where do we want it to be? And how can we, as your management team, provide you with the resources that you need to get there? So I am having to implement structure and communication and feedback methods
Okay.
so that we know what's going on, which is always really exciting if, like me, you love the risk taking, you love the building of things, because I get to create the ideal organization, right? What it should have looked like to begin with, I get to make it my own. So that's an incredibly exciting opportunity for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And one of my mentors once said, yes, Meg, when you are in a senior leadership role, all the changes that you want to implement are so exciting to you, and you're the only person that is excited by them.
It's so true. It's 100% true. I take it back. It's 95% true because there
Right.
are 5% of the people that are in the organization who have likely been beating that drum the whole time. And
Absolutely.
I'm always, like I said, the change agent that comes in. And those that want to be my allies immediately swoop on me and they're like, we've been saying this for years. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness, we can't believe it. But, I think sometimes you have to be a bull in the china shop and you do have to kind of break things to
Mhm.
get it right.
Yeah. Yeah. And just, as long as you say, hey guys, we might break this a little bit and we'll improve it together as we go.
Yep.
Like, I'm not going to play God and swoop down with all these changes and run away. We're in this together. So Erin, your career has progressed really quickly. I want you to pretend that I have a time machine and I can send you back in time to you 15 years ago. What is the best advice or the most important advice you think you could give yourself back then?
Oh, that's easy. Be more confident because you know what you're doing, right? I think a number of us, particularly as females, as we progress towards the C-suite and senior management, I mean, the idea of syndrome is not dead. It has not been that long since the glass ceiling was, cracked or broken altogether, right? We're talking only a few years for some.
Mhm.
So I think you know what you're doing. To tell myself, don't quit, you know what you're doing, and then pick up a book. I started reading true management and leadership literature, I think a few years too late because I could have, I wouldn't have made some of the mistakes I made. Now I learned from it and I learned how to do it the right way. And I think no one should ever be afraid to make a mistake for doing something wrong. So, the three things would be confident in yourself. You know what you're doing. When you get put at the table, have a voice. Don't sit there and just listen. Use that voice. And three, pick up the books. And if you're not sure, do the reading because there's a lot out there. Not all of it's pertinent to where you are, but there are a number of different viewpoints. And so you have to take them all in to get a holistic picture.
Absolutely. That's pretty sage advice. I wish you could visit me 15 years
Yeah,
ago.
I like send me back because I think I'd be a lot better off and there'd be a lot less sleepless nights, from where I am. And, I think another big thing is you got to take care of yourself.
Mhm.
I have found myself in a hospital or down for a week
Mhm.
more times than probably is necessary, and it's 100% because I did not take care of myself. And the problem is that I know that I am I'm important to the organization. And if I don't take care of myself and I go down, who's answering the questions that everybody's looking at me to answer? So I'm not only failing myself, I'm failing the organization too when I don't take care of myself.
And that's a hard one. That's one that we often learn because we end up in the hospital, and we often learn too late what we could have done to save some of those skeletons in our wake.
Yep.
When then we really learn about true leadership and how to actually have and sustain a great professional relationship and influence people. We look back at all this unnecessary stress and mistakes and failures.
Yeah.
And that's what this podcast is all about. So again, Erin, thank you so much for coming and for your straight talk and sharing your wisdom with us. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.